when Ronnie James Dio almost replaced Brian Connolly in The Suite. I'm John Beaudin from Rocky Street Music. It was an honor to talk to Andy Scott, who is always one of my favorite players in Suite, or The Suite, as they say in Europe. Here we talk about Brian Connolly, who had a lot of problems with alcohol, with Andy Scott.
People have said to me that moment when Brian had left the band and we were starting to pick the bones out of the record that he should have been on, the Cut Above the Rest album, where we ended up being a three-piece band. And Ronnie James Dio was up for the gig, to replace Brian, because he and I, got on really well. And I'd already made the decision for everybody. I said, look, this is not a decision that I'm going to make or two of us are going to make. It's the three of us or nothing. If three of us don't agree that this is the right way to go, it can't be a 2-1, because then there's always this. Yeah. And of course, Steve didn't want to do it. He said, I think we can do it just as a three-piece. I now think he was probably wrong. Adding a singer might have changed the dynamic again. And, because Suite, we're used to having a front man, it was...
But you all of you sang. I mean, I remember paying attention to the back of the album and going, wow, they all sing.
Yeah, it's got nothing to do with the fact that we could all sing. It's that focal point. It's that Van Halen moment, the fact that if you change the dynamic of Van Halen and added another, like they did with Sammy, who was a good mate of mine at the time, it was never quite the same as it was with David Lee Roth, was it? But musically, it was great. You can't put your finger on it. You change the dynamic. But going back to moments, yes, you've been through some hard times, and you think, if I'd have made that decision, I wouldn't have gone through this. But you can't beat yourself up about that. You've just got to say, well, I wouldn't be where I am now if I hadn't gone through everything. And, I'm with a fantastic lady who's my now third wife. I've known her for 15 years now coming up. It's one of those things that it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't gone through all the other stuff. So,
Through the years, people always ask me to ask everyone I interview this. I mean, of course, there's an element of every rock star that goes, oh, it's just little old me, because you're with yourself all the time. But as far as being starstruck, in the beginning, you must have been starstruck by meeting some of these people. I mean, you guys were going fast in the early 70s.
Yeah, we knew people like Gillan because the origins of Suite came from a band that Ian Gillan was the singer of. Ian Gillan was the singer in a band called Wainwright's Gentlemen. I know it sounds a bit corny, but they were like a show band, playing the hits of the day, and a good one. And Ian left to join and form a band called Episode 6, and Brian Connolly got the job in Wainwright's Gentlemen after, and Mick was a young drummer in that band after Brian joined. They then realized that the guy who ran Wainwright's Gentlemen wanted a new drummer. Didn't think Mick was quite up to the job. And I thought, this guy's deaf. He must be deaf, because Mick was the most improved drummer that I played with in years. And Brian said to him, I think they're going to throw you out the band. And he went, oh, right. What do you suggest we do? And Brian said, well, I suggest we leave and form our own band. And I thought, you see, that's Brian all over. I love that. And that's how it all started. By the time Suite were getting themselves sorted, I was with the Elastic Band and doing colleges with Episode 6 with Ian Gillan. We were also, at this time, also doing gigs with, this is how integrated all of this is, doing gigs with Pink Floyd at colleges. And it was with Syd Barrett on guitar. But we did a few gigs towards the end of the 60s, 69, where there was another guitarist on stage on the at the back in the corner. And the first time we did a gig like that, he wasn't switched on. He was just there to be on stage, to get used to being on stage. I think they were feeding him in.
Is David Gilmour you're talking about?
Gilmour, yeah. And with the really long hair. the second time we saw them, he's now playing quite a bit. And Sid is off on, you know, a little bit of fairyland. And then there was one gig that we did, like a May ball outdoors in a big tent in Oxford, the Elastic Band, just one of the last gigs we ever did. And Gilmour's now the guitar player, and Sid's nowhere to be seen. And all of a sudden, the band, they're not using this, you know, oil sort of backdrop and front drop.
Yeah.
There's lights on stage. You can see them a little bit. It's all shady like that, and they sound different. And here's a funny one. How can anybody turn around and say that Dave Gilmour is not an original member of Pink Floyd? Of course he is. How can you say that Ian Gillan is not an original member of Deep Purple? Of course he is. I've had it leveled at me. There were two other guitar players who lasted like 6-9 months at a time before I joined Sweet in 1970. I'm still here 51 years later, yet there's still a few oddballs out there who go, "You weren't the original guitar player though, were you?" And I went, "But can you remember who the original guitar players were?" You know?
Genesis is like that too. I talked to Steve Hackett like 8 times or something. And he always says, yeah, no one, he says, no disrespect against them. He says, it's not my fault, but they just don't remember those other guys.
No, but if you don't have success,
yeah,
it's the lineup that has the most success that people kind of remember. I mean, with Deep Purple, you know, you had Rod Evans and Nick Simper on bass. I mean, we knew them, you know, from whatever band it was, Maze, and I think Nick Simper was with Johnny Kidd and the Pirates. You know, so, and he was a good bass player. I think he's probably one of the most unlucky guys in the business, because when Gillan joined, the first thing he said was, because we knew Roger as well, I write with Roger Glover, you know, and he's a bass player. Mm-hmm. And I think Richie probably, because he was the guy at that time, turned around and went, "Oh, I've never really liked Nick Simper. Yeah, let's get Roger in then as well," you know. Well, so, you know, at least the one thing I will say about Sweet is we've never come to blows, fisticuffs. We may have had our disagreements. There's always been respect. There's never been, from my side, any kind of back chat. They were original members of the band. I would never, ever badmouth or say anything about anybody, because none of us would be here without all of that, you know?
More from Andy Scott coming up in the next 3-4 days. Make sure you comment on our videos, subscribe to our channel, and share our videos. And pick up a Rock History Music t-shirt. Help support our channel. Links in the description of this video. I'm John Beaudin from Rock History Music.